All right, welcome to episode 3 of the Modern Monk podcast. As you know, unfortunately, Toby, who's been here for our first 2 podcasts, couldn't quite make it to this one.
No. He's back.
Oh, wait.
You tried to get rid of me. You can't.
We rescheduled some things and Toby is back. So the dynamic duo is back again. Today we're talking about the true value of attention. I love this topic, so I'm very keen to get started. But first of all, how you doing, Tobes?
I'm feeling good. Keen to be back for round 3. Glad we could move some things around.
Yeah.
This is almost the favorite part of my week, I would say. So.
Me too. I'm loving these at the moment.
And yeah, this is another great topic. Attention, the true value of it. I think there's lots of nuggets to be dug here.
Yeah. All right, let's get started. Why is attention so valuable?
It's a limited resource. There's only a finite amount of attention that you have in the day, in the year, in your life. And how you use it will be the biggest differentiator on the outcomes that you get from life. Like, I think that attention is the matrixed entrepreneur's escape. It's the tool that you use because, you 8 hours of your day taken up by someone else. So you maybe only get like 4 hours either side of that where you can decide what you're putting your attention into. And so that's like your most valuable resource. It's like, it is your tool, your key to escape. And I think people who are on a self-growth journey, entrepreneurs, they start to think about what they're putting their attention into. It becomes more of a conscious decision. And something that I realized when I read How to Make Friends and Influence People, a great classic, entrepreneur book.
Classic.
It was about when you have conversations with people, when you're talking to people, depending on what you're paying attention to, you'll get different things out of the conversation. So if you're more observant, you're actually listening to what they're saying, you're asking better questions, you'll be a better friend, you'll be a better communicator, and you'll have a more high value interaction. And that's just from like changing what you're putting your attention into. And that's just in conversations. Like, think about the power of that in any other domain of life. Like, I did a quick Google search and guess $1.24 trillion is spent every year on ad spend just to get your attention. Like $1.24 trillion.
That is a wild number.
It's an astronomical number.
That is
so
big.
I think that speaks to how valuable attention is.
Yeah, and there's a war for attention right now. And I think one of the interesting things that you talked about was that it's particularly important for the people who are in that phase where they're maybe still working a full-time job and they're trying to escape. They're working on the side hustle. And I guess they're currently in an environment where they're so restricted for time. Time is an extreme scarcity. And that is where the attention seems to become even more valuable because you're limited on the resource of time. Attention has to make up for that.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a multiplier. Like when you feel like you have lots of time, you can almost allow yourself to be a bit scattered with your attention. But if you only have 2 hours and there's a lot of things on your to-do list, you've got to be like nailed in focused on what you're doing.
Have you noticed that when you are more busy, you generally get more stuff done? You have an incredibly finite window of time to do stuff, but you just become so much more effective with the time you have. And that's probably partially due to the fact that you have such a scarcity of time, such a scarcity of attention. You have to actually use it effectively. And when you have that abundance of time, you feel like you can just let the attention slack off a bit.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the law, but it's the one where work will expand to the time allotted to it. So if you have lots of time, then you just fill it with you'll lower your attention on what's required to actually get the work done, and you'll just spend more time on it. So yeah, I've definitely felt, as being matrixed worker myself, I found that having those concentrated periods of time forces you to value your attention more highly. And I also think that there's an exponential curve to the returns you get on attention. Your first 30 minutes or whatever increment you want to go up in is still valuable, but every minute after that is more valuable because you can get deeper into like a flow state of work where you just get higher returns. Putting 10 minutes of attention into something and switching, doing 10 minutes of attention into something else, you'll get less overall than doing 20 minutes on one thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're going to touch a bit later of task switching and interruptions, but I agree. It is the more that you can focus on one individual task for a prolonged period of time without any form of distraction, any form of attention pull, the more value you're going to get out of that time. So
Yeah.
100% agree.
And I mean, that's such a thing right now in our world. Like everything is trying to distract you. It's trying to pull you away. It's trying to break your attention. And so like that's the big skill set these days is how do you manage your attention? How do you keep it focused on the things that you want it focused on?
Yeah, I actually heard this was a podcast from Alex Hormozy, and this was probably 3 years ago, but the podcast was titled Attention is the New Oil. And it has really become the most valuable currency in the market right now. And you've seen it reflected in the ad spend, $1.2 trillion. It is so incredibly valuable. Arguably, the most valuable resource is attention right now. And everyone is doing whatever they can do to take your attention. And I personally believe that your attention is your most valuable resource. I think you have two most valuable resources. I think they're time and attention. And I think they go hand in hand because the way I see attention is a time multiplier. If you have incredibly strong attention, then it almost acts as a multiple on your time. I think it has to go hand in hand. If you have an incredibly strong attention span, the time that you put into a task becomes exponentially more valuable. And I think when you think about the amount of work that you can get done in an hour's time now versus what it looked like a year ago, it probably looks like a very, very different thing. So I think it's an incredibly important asset, probably our most valuable asset, and it is why people are trying to steal it. And I think if we truly believed that our attention was our most valuable resource, because I think people understand the concept that attention is your most valuable resource, but are you acting if that's the case? Because you lock your car when you go to the shops. You lock your house when you leave. Why are you doing that? Well, you're doing that to protect your assets. But if your attention is your most valuable asset, what are you doing to protect your attention? People aren't putting locks in place. People aren't putting any preventative mechanisms to stop people from taking their attention. And I think that is one of our biggest issues because, as we know, attention is so highly valued and everyone is trying to take your attention. If you're not locking your attention, if you're not putting any preventative measures in place, anyone and anything is just going to steal your attention because they can and they will. And our environment is designed in a way that all we want to do is take attention.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it.
It's how it's designed these days. It's because it's an intangible asset that you have that you don't have any of these locks in place. Like it's a new medium. But yeah, I so agree with you. It's time and it's attention. Yeah. But attention is the thing that's available to everyone. It's whether you're working a job, you have 3 kids, like attention is something that you can take control of right now to start improving, to start thinking about, being conscious of. Like time can be a little bit more tricky to try and buy back for yourself or to, allocate to the things you want to allocate on because you have responsibilities, you have other commitments, which just makes attention even more valuable, I would say.
Yeah. I see attention as energy. I truly see it as our way of expending the energy I have. How we choose to allocate our attention is really where our energy is going. This is where our life force is going. And I think you can make lots of improvements in lots of areas of your life, but if you let everyone and anything take your attention, you're scattered in 50 different ways. You're making no progress in lots of different places. How are you funneling how you allocate your energy? And I think the way you expend energy is through how you allocate your attention. That's why I think it's your most valuable resource. And that's why I think we need to protect it at all costs.
I agree, which leads me on to how are people devaluing their attention?
So how are people devaluing their attention? I think first of all, that we just discussed, is there is no prevention. No one is trying to prevent people from stealing their attention. When you go onto your phone, and I'm talking about the average person here, you open up your phone and you have 50 different apps on your phone. These apps serve as billboards to channel your attention into where you're going. You have notifications on your phone. So your phone is now screaming at you, telling you where to allocate your attention. When you go onto these apps, there's little things telling you to go this way and this way and this way. Everything is trying to pull your attention and you do nothing to stop it. You do absolutely nothing to stop it. So that is absolutely the first thing, is we're just not preventing anything at all. The second thing is, because of the way we're designed right now, if you live your life on autopilot mode, you're always going to choose the easy things that feel really good, the stimulating things, and generally those are the things that are trying to steal your attention the most. Think about platforms like YouTube. Think about platforms like TikTok, like Instagram. How do they make their money? Because I think if you understand how they make their money, you understand how they work and what they want out of you. They only make money by selling ads. And how do they make money from their ads? Well, they have people watch them. How do more people watch their ads? Well, they spend more time on the platform. So the only goal of these apps is to make you spend as much time and attention on these platforms as possible. Yet we're consuming a crazy, crazy amount of these apps, of these products all the time. And when we're choosing the easy, constant stimulus thing, we're spreading our attention incredibly thin. If you think about what you do on a daily basis, if you wake up and you're instantly on social media, there's now probably 50 different pieces of information that you've received that's pulled your attention in 50 different ways. That's a pretty shocking start to the day, right? And then after that, maybe you start consuming some news. And now your attention is thinking about the war going on the other side of the world or a political event happening over there. And then you go back on social media and you're worried about what your friends are doing in high school, right? And then you're concerned about the 3 different sports teams you're following, and your attention is diluted in 50 different ways because we have no prevention in there. We have no lock on it. We're just letting anyone and anything take it, which I think is a big issue. But I think the biggest way that we're devaluing our attention is we're worrying about things outside of our control. I think if you think about it as a fundamental concept, if you only focus on things within your control, you would have an incredible attention span. You would have incredible focus on your goals, on your actual objectives. But I think right now, if we think about our attention allocation, we're probably allocating 80% of our attention to things outside of our control. Things like politics, things like social media, sports teams, right? Just general Instagram scrolling, news feeds, all of this stuff. And we're worrying about all of these things outside of our control. And the thing is, you're receiving a whole lot of input, but you can't do anything about this information. You're just worried and concerned about 50 things you can't control. Then you sit down to do something that's moving you towards your goals, and your brain is thinking about the 50 things that you can no longer control. And you just feel like a powerless and weak individual. And I think it's a huge way that we're devaluing our attention.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's almost like a philosophy for life in there, in the only put your attention into things that you can control. I think it's a great way to think holistically about the life, the things that you tackle, what's important to you, your kind of priority list, where you're spending your time, how like all these things we've talked about, crafting your environment, like things that you control. I think it sets you up for success if you're not wasting your 2 most valuable resources on things that will have no impact on your life, on where your life's going, on your goals, on anything that's going to actually positively influence you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm. I also think that there's, a devaluation of attention by dilution. I think we talk about, it being exponentially more valuable to you the deeper you can go into one source of attention. I think the opposite is true. If you have too many things distracting you, you're diluting your attention. So even though you might be working on the right things, so everything in your life is high ROI, or picking the right actions, but you just have too many. You can't actually get to the deep enough level where you make the returns that you really want out of any of the actions. I think because we receive so much information, so much advice, do this, do it this way, change it, do it that way. It's so easy to just be scattered between 17 different approaches and never put the time or the attention into one of them to actually see what the returns would be.
Yeah, that was probably one of my actually biggest discoveries of this month. Was you can spend a lot of time accumulating knowledge and information, which can be helpful in leading you on a certain path. But after a certain period of time, there's only so much information that you can receive. After that, it's like, okay, I now pretty much know the inputs I need to get to my goal. I don't need the other 50 different approaches that can also get me there. Because yes, they'll all work, but they're not going to work if I try and do all of them at the same time. Let me just choose one and just do that, rather than, oh, maybe I can slightly optimize my workout routine this way. Oh, maybe I should change the diet. And then just everything falls and goes, oh, maybe if I change my niche this way. And you just end up just falling off. And I think you're right. That's a huge one, is just focusing on one thing and just allowing compounding and allowing consistency to kick in. Because I think if there's one trait I want to have, it's consistency. And you can't get consistency if you're always switching and trying to optimize and change and improve and question what you're doing all the time.
Yeah, we're touching on not letting good get in the way, not letting great or perfect get in the way of good. I think that's a topic for another episode. But
Could be a
yeah,
full episode,
it's a great one there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think another thing I want to touch on is that if you're unclear on what your attention deserves, it will end up just wasting away into the path of least resistance. Like least resistance. We talked about it with our environment. I think it's the same here. If you're not clear about what your attention deserves and you're not putting barriers in place and taking consistent action to put the attention where it deserves to be, then it will just get sapped away. Like if you don't use it, you're going to lose it because there's billion-dollar companies that are fighting for it. So they're going to grab it if you're not putting any conscious effort into what it's going into.
Yep. Everyone wants your attention, so if you don't want it, you're going to lose it.
Yeah, use it or lose it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so how do you think people right now are devaluing their attention?
I think there's a lot of problems that people either don't want or can't solve that they just like to think about, and they let take up real estate in their mind. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about before of it being out of your control, really, because there must be something in the human psyche that just has a desire to just ruminate on problems, on issues, even though there's zero connection, correlation between you and the issue. I think it's why people like gossiping so much and hearing other people's problems, is because it's kind of just intriguing. It's almost like a brain teaser, but it's just the worst way to value your attention, to be spending it thinking about problems that aren't your problems or that aren't solvable. All it's going to do is sap your attention and drain it into things that are not returning any value to you.
And so last week we talked about we were talking about the price of comfort, and one of the things that we talked about was ignoring the big thing that you need to get done and just hiding from it, and that becoming a bigger and bigger monster. But the other thing is, it's not only a bigger and bigger monster, but it's also a thing that you're always thinking about a little bit. It always occupies a little bit of your mind by not just actively taking it on. I think that's a little bit what you're talking about right now.
100%. I can recount so many times that I knew I had a task to do, put it off, and then it continued to consume my attention in 5-minute blocks where I'd think, oh yeah, I need to do that. And what was the first thing that I needed to do in that thing? I was probably going to start by doing that. Then I was going to move on to that. But I got to not remember that there's also that one thing part of it. And that happens almost daily if it's a big enough, important enough task. And so not only by attacking it first, putting your attention onto it, do you kill it? It's dead. The monster's dead. You also then get back all of those 5-minute chunks that you were going to spend thinking about it because it's in your brain. It's drawing attention from you. Yeah. So yeah, those big monsters, they're attention suckers. And you got to slay them.
They really are, and they just pile up. They'll just stack and get bigger and bigger, drain more of your attention.
And that kind of makes sense when we talk about how it's cyclical, that when the monsters get big enough, you choose comfort to escape from them because you don't have any attention left to actually work through your problems, because it's all being sapped in these micro doses by all of these unresolved giant monsters under the bed. And so you don't actually have the capacity anymore. You don't have all your attention is being drained. You don't have the attention that you need to solve the problems that would make the monsters go away.
I like that. Yeah.
It's a tough situation to be in. And I put myself in that situation many, many times. And I think it's only through the repetitions and from talking about it, hearing people talk about it, that you can identify it and then start to counteract it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a huge one. It's a huge one.
I mean, another huge one is cheap dopamine.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about it with the social media apps, with your phone, with anything that's trying to grab your attention. And it makes you feel good. Like it gives you cheap dopamine. And so your brain is naturally going to want more of it, and you have to put a lot of effort. And you actually don't have to put a lot of effort into it if you follow the Modern Monk course. But a lot of people think that it's going to be a lot of effort to remove.
Yeah. Well, it takes conscious decisions to remove it. But yeah, if you're living passively, as we talked about, then it is a default. It's the autopilot. And when we talk about cheap dopamine, we're talking about things like scrolling your phone. We're talking about things like playing video games, binge watching TV shows, watching a bunch of sports teams, keeping up with politics, doing all of these things that are just making you feel good in the moment. They're cheap, impulsive pleasures, but they're not moving you towards your goals. And I bracket this under the term online entertainment because I think that's fundamentally what it is. And it's just so easy to access now. We just have it in our back pocket at all times. There's no resistance in place to stop us from doing it. And these are the easy things to do. But the thing about all of these things is all of them are outside of your control, right? Like the social media, how can you control that? You can't. Politics, how can you control that? You can't. Your sports team, how can you control that? You can't. The TV show you're watching, how can you control that? You can't, right? So now you've just allocated a huge amount of your attention to all of these things that are completely outside of your control. And we can talk more about how this is affecting your brain, because it's not just that you're allocating things to outside of your control. It's also down-regulating your dopamine system, rewiring your reward system to want to keep doing these impulsive behaviors rather than moving you towards your goals. There's a whole host of issues, but if we just think specifically about your attention here, these are total attention drains all into things outside of your control. And if it's outside your control, there's nothing you can do about it. So why are you wasting time thinking about it? Because if you can't control it, when we talked about the monsters earlier and how if you can slay the monster, it no longer occupies space in your mind. If you can't control an outcome, you can't slay the monster. If you can't slay the monster, it always occupies space in your mind and it will just continue to sit there forever, right? And as the more you consume, there's just more and more problems, more and more micro monsters. And this is how I consider it, I call this your potency as a person, right? Someone who can allocate their attention to maybe 1 to 3 things that are in their control, that are specifically goal-oriented. They're a very potent person. They're channeling their energy into the things that genuinely move them towards their goals. A person that is diluted, the term that you use, which I love that term, is a person who has these micro monsters around them at all times. They're worrying about 50 different things. They can never go deep on anything and they can't make any progress. They move nowhere in a lot of different directions.
I love that idea of the micro monster, the unslayable micro monster. It's just things that you think you should care about that are completely out of your control, and they'll just zap your attention. An unslayable micro monster. If you know, you know.
The unslayable micro monster. Hey, here's another one: is bad relationships.
Okay.
Relationships that you have that occupy space in your mind, that they're probably unresolvable. There's probably nothing you can do about them, but you think about them a little bit. And I think, especially on the entrepreneurial path, there is the fear and there's the uncertainty, and there's certain people's opinions that you really care about. And that occupies space in your mind. And constantly worrying about their opinions, these may be people that you haven't seen for years and years and years, but you're worrying about their opinion, right? People from high school that you haven't seen for 7 years, but for some reason now their opinion that you care about. You might never see these people again, right? But worrying about other people's opinions and being in relationships where you know, I probably, this won't be a long-term relationship. This won't be forever, but this is occupying a huge amount of my mental space, a huge amount of my energy, a huge amount of my resources as a human being is going into this relationship and is draining from me. And I know you've had some people in your life who you've seen have been in those situations where they have people draining energy from them and it's hard to watch. But I think that's something that we've been very conscious about trying to not be a part of, is having these bad relationships draining our energy. But I think for a lot of people, they have these people in their lives that are real energy drainers, real attention drainers they're not going to be there long term. So why are we spending so much of our attention on them?
It's a great thing to touch on. I think we could do a whole separate episode on relationships, but I do want to spend a bit of time talking about it now because I have personal vested interest in this topic. I had a long-term relationship that changed to a point where we were both just really bad for each other, and we were both just devaluing each other's life energy and force. We just weren't a match anymore. And I think it's a common thing that a lot of people go through where, you know, a relationship turns a little bit sour, but you're connected, you're invested in this thing, and so you're too close to see the logic behind how your value, your attention, your time, everything is really just being wasted. And so you stay in it long enough. So I think, it's definitely something that's worth talking about in the realm of attention.
And with these relationships, I think the sunk cost fallacy is just always there, especially these long-term romantic relationships. It's like, I've put so much time and effort into this, I don't want to let it go. But sometimes that is the right decision. And obviously it's situation, circumstance dependent, but it can be the right thing to do, because as we know, our attention is our most valuable resource. We're limited by time. We're only on this earth for a certain amount of time, so let's not waste it.
Better get to it.
Yeah, let's not waste it. All right. The last thing I think people are really wasting their time and attention on, and this was a really big one for me, is just media and politics. And I think this is a whole separate question here, but I want to talk about why we have stopped consuming politics, because I was someone who I spent a huge amount of time consuming politics, particularly when I was early 20s. I started watching politics when I sort of finished high school. It was quite an interesting, exciting thing to do. And I've consumed quite a bit of politics up until, maybe my late teens to early 20s. And it produced a lot of dopamine. It felt like a fun thing to do, but it drained a huge amount of time, and it was really something that became a really bad thing for me to have in my life. Now, there's lots of reasons why politics is bad. I think the first big one is that you're worrying a lot about things outside of your control. There is no control that you have in politics at all. And one of the things is right now, okay, there's nothing in politics you can control right now. If you want to become the kind of person that can influence politics, that is a lot of attention you have to allocate to becoming a person that can influence politics. You don't have time to allocate attention to politics right now if you actually want to influence it, right? We work with what is in our sphere of control. And if our sphere of control gets big enough that you can control politics, start worrying about politics, right? But until then, it has absolutely no place. So the big one is just a huge amount of time, huge amount of attention sucked into things outside of your control. I think another huge thing is that media, just politics in general, huge negative bias. Their main goal is to get people consuming their content. What do people click on? Negative stuff. What are they going to put out there? Negative stuff. What are you listening to when you consume politics, right? Or the news in general? Well, it'll be plane crashes, wars going on, celebrities or famous people dying, scandals in the news, some sort of political race. 9 out of 10, just people dying is basically it, or some sort of political race that you may or may not be even eligible to vote in. For example, I really cared about the 2020 US election. I'm in Australia. I'm like 19 years old in Australia. I have no control over any of this, but it occupied a huge amount of my focus and attention. But the fact that it is so negatively biased and you're consuming so much negative information, it will manifest in you a little bit. Like, as much as we want to think, that's not really true. Like, if you consume a lot of negative stuff, if you're around a lot of negative people, you're going to have that negative bias. If you consume a lot of positive stuff, if you're around a lot of positive people, you'll develop that positive bias. One of the big issues that I've found with politics is there's a huge negative bias. You think so pessimistically about the world. You think that everything's bad, everyone is bad. And then, now that I've stopped consuming politics, I look around and I realize, basically everything about my life is way better than it was 5 years ago. Way better. And I wouldn't know that if I just consumed the media and the politics and everything. I would think that, if I walk outside, someone's going to shoot me. And the world is absolutely terrible. So that was a big one. And then the third big thing probably the biggest reason that I thought politics was just a horrible thing for my life, is that it brainwashes you. It 100% brainwashes you. Because how is it that there's only 2 opinions in the world? There's 50 different things that you could hold opinions for, but everyone holds all the opinions about one thing, or everyone holds the exact opposite about the other. These could be completely contradictory things to believe, but because one side believes it, you believe everything. Which means that you're now no longer thinking for yourself. You're letting someone else think for you. And how are you truly going to come up with your own beliefs, your own opinions, if all you're doing is just listening to the same talking points, the same people saying the exact same things over and over again, indoctrinating yourself into believing a certain way? I'm not talking to someone who's displaying their political beliefs. I'm talking to someone displaying Ben Shapiro's political beliefs, or I'm talking to someone who's displaying CNN's political beliefs. I'm not actually understanding what you truly believe. This has nothing to do with your true intrinsic values. This is just an ideology that you've forced upon yourself by the sort of media you've been consuming. So that's a big reason, bit of a rant there, but a big reason why I just hate politics. And I think it has no place in my life.
Yeah, you touched on all the big the big cornerstones there. And I think the last one was probably the most important, related to identity. You just become a mirror for the things that you consume. If you really wanted to form your own opinion and you had 24 hours to do so, you would not spend 24 hours consuming news and politics content. You would maybe spend 4 hours, then you would sit down, think about it, come up with your own ideas and thoughts on it, and then present your unique opinion about things related to politics, news, whatever. But that's not how anyone operates. Everyone operates by choosing a news source, watching 100% of everything that they put out, and then regurgitating that same information to other people, and then staking their identity behind it, and like dying on that hill. And it's all stuff that's out of your control. It's really mind-boggling that, because just being out of it and seeing people that are in it so consumed by it, it's almost like hard to believe. And it's so common. And there's this aspect to it of like keeping up with the Joneses, I think, Keeping up with the Joneses, like, oh, I've got to have the car, I've got to have the house, everything has to look right for the neighborhood I'm in. You got to, impress the right people. A part of that is like, oh, did you watch the news last night? Are you up with what's going on here and there? But if what's going on is just negative, like death and abuse and opinions that aren't yours being shoved down your throat, like why are we forcing each other to all keep up with this?
Yeah.
It's odd. I find it odd.
Yeah. Two things to add to that. First of all, how much of what you consume is still relevant in 3 months?
So little, because everything that's newsworthy, it's just a headline.
Yeah. If you genuinely consumed a lot of politics and then looked at what you consumed 3 months ago and saw what was relevant, it would be basically nothing of what you consumed. That's a big one. And then another one that I forgot to really touch on, but is probably the biggest one, is it makes people hate you.
True.
Like half of the people are going to maybe like you a bit more for your opinions, but half the people just hate you.
Yeah.
Half the people actually just hate you for your beliefs that aren't even your beliefs. It's someone else's beliefs that have been forced upon you. And people start to really dislike you. And that's one of the big things that I found when I moved to, we both went to college together, and we're around open-minded people, but they're not necessarily that open-minded to other opinions, and neither was I. And it just meant that everyone just absolutely, we just didn't get along. There was a lot of clashing over opinions that neither person genuinely came to on their own accord. So why are we making people hate us? Why are we consuming a bunch of negative information? Why are we worrying about things outside of our control? Why are we putting so much of our time and attention into something that just has zero positive impact on your life?
Yeah, you're choosing to support a team that's going to go fight a war that only negatively affects you and is completely out of your control. Like, at least if you support a sports team, you get to like share in the victories and like there's a bit more camaraderie and stuff. But like choosing a side in politics just for them to go at each other and have probably like 50 or like 33% of the population think negatively of you because of those beliefs that you probably don't even hold, you're just regurgitating. That you probably are just passed down from your parents too. Like a lot of this is just like what you grew up watching, what news and politics is just like you've been surrounded by. You just go, oh, I don't really care that much. I just like watch a bit here and there, and like that's who they like, so I like them too.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
All right, we can go on, or we can go on all day about politics. It is a crazy one, but let's move on here. So, Toes, what's the cost of switching tasks and being interrupted?
Big. It's a big cost, and it's a hidden cost. You don't realize what it's taking from you, but it's taking a lot. You cannot multitask to the level where you can get the same amount of returns from just sharpening your attention on one task and going deep into the focus state of getting that work done. You'll unlock things that you didn't even know were possible. You'll have ideas, you'll make more progress. It's just the state that you need to be in. And so if you think about interruptions, it's not just 5 minutes of your attention that's been sapped. It's the loss of the 25 minutes it took to get to that state, which is then instantly snapped out of with one tiny interruption. That's why it's such a hidden cost, and it maybe doesn't seem like such a big deal. But when you get to that state of deep work often enough and you realize how powerful and potent it is, you start to really dislike interruptions and distractions, because you're like, I know how hard it was to get an hour deep into this work. And now someone's just knocked on my door and I'm pulled out of it and they're asking me some random question about lunch. And it starts to grind on you. And I think you only realize that when you start valuing your attention properly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the exact same thing. Like it's not the 30 seconds that it takes to check a message. It is everything that it took you to get to that position. It is you no longer doing the work you're doing, you allocating your attention elsewhere, and then you having to bring yourself back in. Because what is easier for you to do? To continue in the flow or to switch courses, change the tasks, do something else, and then come back and then just think that you're going to jump straight back on the boat and get straight back into it. I mean, you talked about how there's the exponential return on the time you get when you can get deep into a task. You just think about when you look at an exponential graph, you'll realize how stupid this is. Because an exponential graph looks like this. And you're basically getting to here. It's about to go like this. And then you're jumping off it. And then you're starting there again, then getting to there, and then jumping off it. Right? You're never getting the big returns that you'll get from actually spending a huge amount of time just allocated to one thing and focusing on it. And what does our environment look like, right? This was our first ever podcast. We talked about environment, but what does your environment look like? Is it easy for you to get in these states, or is your phone screaming at you, right? Is there 50 different things on your computer which could be pulling you away from the work you're currently doing? What does your environment look like? Because it is not the 30 seconds. It doesn't just take 30 seconds. And one of the things that you talked about the other week, which I thought was genius, is you talked about how a lot of this comes from FOMO. People who need their phone on them at all times, it's a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out. And if you said, okay, why can't you just turn off your phone and throw it out the room? It's like, oh, but what if I get a message? Yeah, what if you get a message? Then what? How many times have you received a message and you've been like, thank God I have my phone on me, otherwise something terrible would have happened, right? Probably never.
Never.
Probably never, okay? And maybe you don't have to turn your phone off, but maybe the only thing that can get through to you is a phone call, right? If it was life or death, no one's texting you. No one's messaging you on Instagram, okay? You're probably gonna get a phone call, right? But what does our environment look like? Because it is not the 5 seconds that it takes to switch tasks or to check something. It is all of the focus you had. It is all of that compounding that it took you to get there. And you're just starting all over again. I think it's shocking. And you just lose all presence in what you're doing. And we're talking about work right now, but let's talk about having a conversation. If right now we're talking and my phone buzzes at me and I stop the conversation and I look at my phone, right? Not only have I just forgot what we're talking about, thinking about something else, if I were you, I'd be mad. I'd be pissed. I'd be like, oh, so this buzz on your phone is more important to you than this conversation we're having, right? You'd probably be mad. But it works in every aspect of your life. You lose that sense of presence in the moment of what you're doing. And it doesn't matter if you're having a conversation with someone, you're out at dinner, or if you're sitting down to do a deep work block. You're losing that energy. Talk about the energy, how your attention is your energy, and you're losing that. It's going.
Yeah. And I think the other thing here is that in reality, how is this happening? Like, I can think of an example of if I'm sitting at my desk working and my phone's there and internet drops out for like 30 seconds and I'm stuck on a loading screen. There is a deep desire in me to just pick up my phone and look at something. And so I think there's a real connection, a real line to be drawn here between being okay with being a little bit bored and being able to stay focused and have your attention on tasks. Because there's going to be periods where a page is loading or there's a lull in a conversation or something happens. And if your brain isn't wired to the point where it can handle 10 seconds of boredom, then it will force you to jump to something. You will get up and get your phone. You will pull out your phone and look at something just to fill the space. So I think even just building like the 3-5 seconds of boredom, being okay sitting there, waiting for that, it will help you maintain that stream of focus where you get the exponential returns.
Yep, 100% agree. And let's be honest, if you're waiting a bit for a loading screen and pulling out your phone to scroll a bit, you're not putting it down when the loading screen's done. You're probably going to sit there for a bit longer. And one of my big tricks for getting work done, especially work like a big monster, something that's hard, is it's like you have two options right now. You can sit here or do nothing, or you can get the work done. And based on just everyone's tolerance for boredom, I will sit there for maybe 20 seconds and be like, wow, I would rather be doing something than nothing. I guess I'll just do this. And we just sit there, do nothing for a bit, and then get back into it, right? You're better off just doing nothing, just sitting in what you have than just pulling your attention off to something else, going off with the fairies. Because it really is. When you're going on your phone, you're just off with the fairies.
Yeah, I like that. You're allowing the boredom to motivate you to do the work, because the work then becomes the path of least resistance. You know, if your phone's not in your room, whatever, that's okay. Sitting there doing absolutely nothing unless you are a literal monk is probably less enjoyable than at least trying to fix a problem or solve something or do some sort of work. Yeah, no, it's a great little nugget there. To when you realize the hidden cost of interruptions and distractions, you really start to value your attention, I find. But what I want to know is, what are the 3 things I can do right now to improve my attention and to realize the true value of my attention?
Okay, so this is going to start with an audit. we had an audit last week, but look at your attention. Look at where you're spending your attention, allocating your attention right now. What am I doing right now? Where is my attention going? So maybe you have to have a look at what's happening throughout the day. Where is your attention going? But you need to get a pulse on this, because if you don't understand where your attention is going, you don't know how to fix it. Like you need to actually be able to understand, oh, so my attention goes here and here and here and here. And probably your attention is going to the 50 little micro monsters. It's going off in 50 different directions. But we need to identify, where is our attention going? And I think a pretty good question to ask is, can I control the outcomes of this? And does this move me towards my goals? If the answer to either of those questions is no, it's probably something that you don't need to be allocating your attention to. So, for example, can I influence the outcome of this? Am I watching politics? Can I influence the outcome of that? Probably not. Probably shouldn't be putting my attention on it. Scrolling social media. Can I control the outcome of this? No, probably shouldn't be allocating my attention to this. There are some things that you can't control the outcome of that are worthwhile. These would be things that are moving you towards your goal. And here I'm really thinking about learning. I'm thinking about education, right? Because understanding certain things that are going to unlock ways of doing things can be helpful. So if you're discovering a new concept, a new idea that's going to help you move towards your goals, then you can allocate attention to that. That's fine. Like, I'm not saying that reading a book, or like an educational book, is not going to be helpful, right? Of course it is. But what are we doing right now? Can we influence the outcomes, or is it moving me towards my goals? If the answer is no to either of those 2 questions, then step 3 is you're going to have to start removing them. And what are we going to do again? It's going to be progressive overload, right? We talked about this last week as well, but don't get rid of everything at once, because that's going to be great for 2 days, and then your motivation is going to go, and then you're back to square one. But what am I doing right now that is not moving me towards my goals, that I can't influence the outcomes of? Okay, this thing is taking up the most attention for me. When I sit and scroll social media for an hour a day, this is a huge attention drain. This is going to be the first thing I get rid of. And let me just focus all of my attention into trying to get rid of this, okay? And then 1 month later, maybe move to get rid of something else. And this is the general strategy I follow for the Modern Monk protocol, which would be removing 1 thing per month, particularly if you're doing it by yourself. Like, if you're doing this with a bit of support, you can do maybe 2 or 3 things per month. But the goal is we want long-term behavioral change, right? So if it takes you an extra few months, so be it. But if it means that in a year's time, you have nothing that's draining your attention, that's not moving you towards your goals, that everything in your attention you can control, this is so much better than if you just get rid of everything for 2 weeks and then you throw in the towel and you go back to square one. And in a year's time, you're doing exactly what you're doing today. So making sure we do this progressively and slowly over time so we can make long-term behavioral changes rather than just quick, immediate fixes. That's how I see getting your attention back. Because if you can win, if you can get your attention back, this is your most valuable resource. This is your energy. This is your life force. This is your most valuable resource. So this is how I think that you can get it back.
I love that. And I don't know about anyone that's listening, but what I'm picturing when you gave me that spiel was a bucket full of water. You know, that's your day, that's your energy. And you can choose to pour it into different things, that's your attention. But then you also just have some holes in the bucket. And these are the things these are the micro monsters, these might be the big monsters. But if you just have a piece of tape and you try and cover every single hole in 1 day, the pressure is going to be too much and it's going to blow the tape off. You got to do one hole at a time. Yeah, that's what came to mind. But
100%.
I think those are the 3 steps will have a huge impact on your life if you were to implement them.
Yeah. And how do you see it, Tobes? How do you see it?
The way I see it, we're going to also touch on our favorite two-word combo, which is progressive overload. But I think you need to progressive overload boredom into your week. It could literally be as much as 10 seconds for the first week. But if you just allocate a little bit of time just to sitting and I'm actually going to try and be bored and just do that and slowly progressively build up a little bit here and there, I think that is a huge return on investment for you, that you will be able to continue down the exponential curve of getting the value of your attention. If you can gloss over those 5-10 second up to 5 minute periods of boredom, if you can withstand those and keep your attention focused, I think that's a huge step 1. Step 2, I'm going to say, make feeling present a routine. I didn't touch on it as much as I wanted to before, but thinking about the future and the past, I see as a complete waste of energy and attention. You are in the present. Everything that you need to do is in the present. You should be living in the present. And I think most of us don't. We spend a lot of time thinking about our goals and our futures and things that might happen in the future and things that we are concerned about or things that we did in the past. I think the more that you can bring yourself into the present, you will have a better sense of awareness for what your attention is on, and you'll be able to allocate it more effectively. So, and I also think it will just lead to a more fulfilling life when you're actually present because you only have right now. Something, I could get hit by a car when I walk out of here. So spend as much time in the present, I think. That's step 2. And step 3, document the achievements of deep work. And deep work isn't broad enough. Just document the feelings of having focused attention for a prolonged period of time. It could be a really deep conversation that you have with someone that you like, and you get a lot out of it and you feel like you're really connected. Just take a little mental second to be like, okay, I put a lot of focused attention into this one thing, and what did I get out of it? And if you keep reminding yourself of those things, you'll get to the point where you start hating distractions, you start hating interruptions, because you start to value your attention so much more, because you are reminded of the benefits of when you actually deep dive into something with your attention. You get so much out of it, and you want to keep getting things out of that. So those are my 3 things.
Yeah, I like that. And I like the idea of progressive overloading the boredom and just you're building up your pain tolerance to boredom. Because we both did ice baths for a bit, right? And the ice bath doesn't change temperature. It doesn't become necessarily easier, but you can just tolerate it better. And I think that's sort of the same with boredom. And I think that's a very interesting point, is that can we allow a little bit of boredom into our lives and start to tolerate it? And then tolerate a little bit more and a little bit more, rather than saying, oh, this is a problem, we can fix it. Because especially with our phones, there is such a direct correlation between the cognitive feeling of boredom and the instant response. The instant, oh fuck, let me pull out my phone and start. I need my phone. I need to cure this boredom thing immediately. That trigger to response. But I think what you're doing when you start to build up and progressive overload the boredom is you're changing that immediate response within you, that innate response, to, rather than going, oh, boredom, phone, going, boredom, okay, why are we bored? Am I bored because I'm running away from something, because I'm scared that something is going to be difficult and painful? Let me just sit in this for a second. And it might be 5 seconds, and it's like, okay, and back to it. Rather than, oh, I'm scared, I'm bored, phone, oh, cured, fixed, I'm normal now. Actually just sitting in the boredom for a little bit, I think it's a super powerful one.
Yeah. I think you'll find that you'll notice that trigger if you just move your apps on your phone or you get rid of them, because you'll pull out your phone and you'll just click an empty spot on your phone. It's that deep rooted into your brain. Boredom, phone, click. I reckon you could turn a phone off and have someone just touch a blank screen in a moment of boredom, and it would be the exact requirements to open their favorite app.
Yeah.
So,
and for me personally, when I deleted Instagram, it was such a go-to for me. Boredom, phone, Face ID, unlock, Instagram. I feel good now. And when I deleted Instagram, it was like, boredom, what is this? I still feel bored right now. What is going on? This sucks. I hate this.
And usually that's enough to trigger, okay, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
It gives you a breath.
The little bit of friction, just a small bit of friction to go, hold on, what are you doing? Back to it. Right?
Monkey
Yeah,
chimp brain.
yeah, because you are. It's like, oh no, bored, fix, solution. Oh, there we go. Right?
All right.
But yeah, so I hope that covers a little bit of the value of attention. Honestly, this is a topic that we can discuss for forever because attention truly is, in my opinion, your life source, your energy. It's your most valuable resource alongside your time. It's a multiplier on your time. And I think if we can start to really treat this like our most valuable resource, you don't leave the house unless you lock it. You don't leave your car unless you lock it. You care about your valuable resources. You protect them at all costs. You don't let anyone or anything have them. So I hope that gave you guys a bit of an insight into how we think about our attention. To be honest, I think we're probably going to get more extreme about how we allocate our attention.
I would agree.
The more the years go by.
And what I'd also like to say to anyone listening, that if you're listening to that and some of it resonated with you and you agree that maybe you should be locking your brain and valuing your attention a bit more higher, like you would lock your house, like you would lock your car, then that's what this modern monk course is for. It'll give you the tools to be able to lock your brain, to be able to value your attention highly, be able to pursue things you want without having to rely on motivation. Like all these things that we're talking about here are things that we've discovered and Cormac has developed and put into practice and made available to you. So if any of this is resonating with you, then I think you know where you need to be.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. We want to try and do this without the motivation. We talked, I think last week or the week before, how we don't use motivation because motivation is an emotion. It's not reliable. There's far more effective ways of making behavioral change without emotion. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. Toby will be with us next week. I won't scare you guys like we did today, but I know it's good to have you, Toes. And yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for listening. For everyone who is inside the Modern Monk community, we're going to be moving on to Q&A calls. So we'll speak to you. For everyone who's not in the community, I'm not sure what you're doing.
What are you doing?
We post these a month in advance. So if you want to watch these live when they're actually happening and get early access to the content, then you can join the community and you can ask us questions. So probably a good thing to do.
Double whammy.
Double whammy. All right.
Don't have FOMO. Be there.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll see you next week with Toby to discuss another very interesting topic.
See you next week.
Cheers.